Vaughn stands on the steps in the darkness, refusing to succumb to fear. She speaks to the hidden enemy, promising salvation through death. Hearing movement below, she pulls the trigger of her flamer, but the Prometheum tanks are dry. She activates her underslung chainsword. The weapon roars to life, showering the dark with sparks. A mutated face with a lipless mouth lunges out of the gloom. The teeth of the sword bite into flesh, spraying blood. The heretic attempts to level a weapon at her, but Vaughn severs his arm, kicks him down the stairs, chases him down, and finishes him off with 2 strikes, whispering a prayer. A metallic screeching and whistling rises all around them. The voice of the Blackstone itself, attempting to weigh upon her psyche. Vaughn merely smirks. Thaddeus calls out to her. She replies that she is fine and continues preaching to the shadows. She hears a rustle and lunges with her sword that strikes only stone. A section of the floor rises, taking on a parody of human form, but immediately crumbles into black facets. Vaughn realizes that the fortress is unstable and chaotic. It is preparing for rebirth, just as Thaddeus warned. The noise returns. Vaughn attacks another column that has assumed a human shape. In the reflection of the black stone, she sees her own iron-masked face. The column shatters, tumbling downwards with a crash. Vaughn follows into the darkness, navigating by touch, and spots strange geometric shapes below, resembling architecture. Someone calls her name. She thinks it is their abhuman companions, but the figure of her mother steps out of the darkness. Her mother looks exactly as she did many years ago. She calls Vaughn a traitor and strikes her across the face. Vaughn falls, hitting her head on the steps. Her mother kicks her in the temple, then in the stomach. Vaughn curls up on the floor, her mouth filling with blood, as her mother continues to beat her, accusing her of betraying her kin for an outsider. As her mother raises a fist for another blow, Vaughn rolls away. The fist strikes stone. Vaughn leaps up and decapitates the figure with her chainsword. The body falls, but then vanishes, dissolving into a pile of black polyhedrons. Vaughn realizes this is an illusion, spawned by the fortress or the heretics to exploit her fears. She convinces herself that she does not fear her mother's memory, yet doubt creeps in regarding the righteousness of her past actions. To banish these thoughts, she rushes back to Thaddeus, believing his presence will restore her clarity. She finds Thaddeus sitting over the sacred book, the Liber Judox. He is without his mitre, furiously scratching his bald skull. Thaddeus declares that he is not the chosen one, and, in a fit of rage, hurls the sacred book against the wall, then begins beating it with his mace. His servo skull barely manages to dodge the blows. Vaughn tries to stop him, but Thaddeus violently throws her onto the steps. He raises the mace to strike, but recognizes Vaughn and freezes. Thaddeus admits that he reached the crucible, but it would not let him in. His prayers failed. He believes he has been mistaken all these years and is not the Anointed One. Vaughn tries to convince him that the time simply hasn't come yet, but Thaddeus insists. The time has come. The fortress is rebirthing, but he has been rejected due to his pride. Vaughn gathers the torn pages of the book and demands that he read them again. The walls of the massive hall begin to collapse, disintegrating into black shards that gather into mounds. The floor moves beneath their feet. The steps vanish, turning into a flowing stream of debris. Vaughn screams that it is time to leave, but Thaddeus stares into the void in a stupor. Vaughn shakes him, demanding he not fail her. The walls disappear completely, and they find themselves atop a heap of rubble amidst endless darkness. From below, rising from the shifting debris, emerges a giant drone the size of a tank, standing on 3 arachnid legs and bristling with weaponry. Vaughn tries to aim her empty flamer. Thaddeus calls this their punishment. Vaughn screams that they must seize control of the fortress so it does not fall to the enemy. Suddenly, Thaddeus finds a new interpretation in the scriptures. He decides he was denied entry to the Crucible because he failed to purge the heresy from the Explorer's Station itself. Precipice. Fanatical confidence returns to Thaddeus. He dons his mitre once more. He declares he will fulfill his mission. At that moment, the drone opens fire. The ground beneath Vaughn explodes. She falls, but scrambles back up. The drone advances. Thaddeus stands his ground, howling prayers at the machine as it trains its cannons on him. Vaughn throws herself at the priest, knocking him off his feet. The spot where Thaddeus stood is obliterated by an explosion. The impact causes the slab they landed on to break loose, sliding down the steep slope. The drone continues to fire after them, but Vaughn and Thaddeus, clinging to a fragment of the wall, plummet into the dark abyss. Quintus stands in the luxurious cabin of the Vanguard, watching Janus Drake, who stands with his back to him at the viewing screen. The rogue trader holds one hand behind his back while bringing a smoking glow stick to his mouth with the other, indifferently commenting that everything is falling apart. Beyond the viewport, the Precipice station is indeed in a state of collapse. Geomagnetic storms rage, chaos forces are restoring their shrines, and ships are being torn from their moorings. The cabin is shaken by a powerful impact caused by the salvos of Blackstone weapon systems. Quintus grabs the back of a chair to stay standing as books and ornaments tumble to the floor. Drake continues to smoke, unperturbed, merely brushing plaster from his sleeve before returning to the desk to study sketches of alien life forms. Quintus is nervous, stroking a bone plate hidden beneath the skin of his wrist, which has grown in size. He tries to make small talk about the weather and mentions staying at an establishment called the Helmsman. Drake interrupts him, turning to declare that the Helmsman is a pit unworthy of a servant of his house, and forbids Quintus from visiting it. Drake approaches silently, stepping over debris-strewn carpets, and conducts an interrogation. He asks if the servant arrived from the Regius system, mentioning that his attaché, Isola, checked his references. Drake trains his augmetic eye on Quintus and tries to catch him in a lie by asking about the fencing skills of his former master, Lord Truce. Quintus does not fall for the trick, replying that Truce was wounded at the start of the crusade. Drake accepts the answer, but dubiously queries his military training, which Quintus also confirms. Drake walks to a couch covered in plaster debris, brushes off the trash, and sits. The ship lists heavily again. Furniture slides across the floor, and paintings crash from the walls with a splintering sound. Ignoring the chaos, Drake dictates the schedule. Breakfast at 10, moustache care with special wax, and a perpetually clean uniform. He picks up a stack of papers featuring Xenos drawings, makes notes, and pontificates on the importance of manners. Then, tilting his head back, he orders Quintus to shave him. Quintus looks at the sharp razor rattling on the tray, realizing the risk of such a procedure during the tremors. Instead of the razor, Quintus retrieves a crystal tube from his pocket, announcing that a cargo ship has arrived with a package. Drake breaks the wax seal, unrolls the parchment bearing his family crest, and immerses himself in reading. Quintus pours him some amasec and, seizing the moment, examines the drawings on the desk. He sees an image frighteningly similar to the bony growth in his own wrist. The captions read, "Parasite, treachery, extremely dangerous predator." Quintus backs away in horror. Having finished the letter, Drake squeezes the glass with such force that it shatters. Shards bite into his palm, blood mixes with wine and drips onto the carpet. Without changing his expression, he extends his bloody hand to Quintus to be bandaged. As the servant picks the glass from the wound and binds the hand, Drake announces that he is ruined and orders Isola and a certain outsider invited to breakfast. Quintus reflects on the strange laws of Precipice, where humans and Xenos coexist in a tense truce maintained by the fear of mutual destruction and the lust for profit. This fragile order is guarded by proctors who punish violators with death and seize their property. Still unaccustomed to the proximity of aliens, Quintus enters the dining room of the Vanguard with trepidation and sees a Kroot at the table. This 7-foot creature, with spiked skin, a beak, and quills rattling on its head, looks repulsive. The Kroot constantly twitches, sniffs the air, and taps at the fetishes hanging across its chest. Spotting Quintus, the Xenos studies him with beady black eyes and emits a series of before asking, "About the arrival of the others." Drake, seated at the set table, confirms that he is waiting for the pilot and his attaché. The room smells of exquisite food, and soft music plays, creating an illusion of safety, while the station outside falls apart. The women enter. Isola, fit and impeccable in her naval uniform, and Odus, heavy-set and wearing a worn flight suit. Odus immediately shows disrespect, throwing her feet, clad in dirty boots, onto the table and grabbing a piece of fruit. Drake stares at her silently until she removes her legs. Drake hands Isola a scroll and announces the news. His father's patience has run out. Janus Drake has been disinherited, stripped of his titles, access to funds, and even the rights to the ship, the Vanguard. He is officially ruined. Odus makes her, suggesting he sell the family portraits to buy a ticket home in a cargo container. Maintaining icy composure, Drake informs them that he can no longer pay wages, so Odus is free to go. He then turns to Isola and tells her that she has been fired by his father as damaged goods, and that he cannot support her either. Quintus waits in horror to be dismissed as well, but he is forgotten. When asked about his plans, Drake declares that he will return to the Blackstone Fortress. Odus and Isola skeptically point out that the fortress is unstable, the old routes are blocked by heretics, and the deep zones are shifting. Drake counters that his objective has changed. He no longer seeks the glory of a conqueror. He needs money. He intends to become a common scavenger, extract archaeotech from the fortress, sell it, and build a new trading empire from scratch, just to spite his father. The question arises of who will lead them inside if the old paths are closed. The Kroot, Grek, names them Rain and Rouse, two abhuman ratlings. They recently guided the mad priest Thaddeus to a zone called the Aberration. Grek explains that the ratlings do not need to be paid. He tears a clump of mud and insects from his armor, demonstrating a metaphor. The ratlings need protection to re-enter the Aberration, where they wish to return with Thaddeus. Drake decides to find the Ratlings and offer them an escort in exchange for a route to the treasures. He asks Isola to join him, but she refuses to be a servant. Isola delivers a speech declaring that the Imperium is crumbling. The fleets are not coming to save them, and the only value now is money, which guarantees survival. She demands a partnership. Drake refuses a partnership, considering it beneath him, but agrees to take her on as a freelancer with an equal share of the loot, the same as Odus. Grek interrupts the discussion, revealing a strange object, a strand of black gems that twists and changes shape right on his claw, transforming from a sphere to a cube. The Kroot warns that the Blackstone is rebirthing, its cycle accelerating, and the passage will soon close forever. Realizing there is no time, Drake orders the contracts prepared immediately and announces the start of the expedition. They set off to find the Ratlings. Rain and Rouse creep through the darkness of the alien ship they have just infiltrated. Their only source of light is the barrel-mounted lumen on Rouse's rifle. The beam picks out sacks from the gloom, and upon closer inspection, Rouse discovers with horror that one of them bears a human face, while severed body parts and entrails are scattered around. Rouse notices spiked runes on a cargo container and realizes they have boarded a Drukhari vessel. Above them, a door slams, followed by the stomp of running feet. The Ratlings rush back toward the access hatch. As soon as they scramble outside, the cargo hold behind them is flooded with light. Rain and Rouse leap onto the Selsam Gate mooring boom, finding themselves amidst the choking smog and chaos of Precipice. Around them lies a jumble of ships welded together, teeming with crowds of humans, tech priests, and Xenos. The Ratlings use their small stature to weave between the legs of passers-by, but their pursuers, killers clad in black, are close behind. The whistle of projectiles cuts the air. The Ratlings jump from one battered hull to another, dodging fire. Rouse takes a hit to his armored vest, curses while checking the hole, and rolls forward to follow his brother. They hurtle over gantries, shove past merchants, and dive under the chassis of a massive macro hauler. The shots continue, bullets pinging sharply off metal. Rouse spots a broken hatch, and they jump down, falling through a wall of hot steam. The Ratlings land with a dull thud in a cargo hold packed with fuel canisters. They are met by an emaciated teenager, barely holding a heavy lasgun. Behind him hide small children, clutching lengths of pipe. The boy threatens to shoot. Rouse raises his hands, explaining that they fell by accident, and points out the danger of firing near unstable promethium. The boy claims their father will soon return from the Blackstone Fortress with money for a new ship. Rouse notices an inflamed cut on the teenager's arm. Ignoring Rain's protests, he hands the children their last medkit and a combat knife, while Rain adds his ration pack. From outside, the thunder of boots and gunfire returns. The Ratlings warn the children of the danger and take flight once more. As they break cover, another burst of fire strikes the fuselage. They sprint across a bridge and jump into a pit filled with exhaust fumes and mud, hoping to reach the Helmsman, a bar where shooting is forbidden. A thunderous voice booms through the smoke, ordering them to stand at attention. The Ratlings reflexively straighten up. A massive Astra Militarum veteran sergeant, chest heavy with medals, emerges from the fog. He is insane, mistaking them for auxiliary troops He barks orders at invisible soldiers and offers them rations before dismissal. He points to the open ramp of his ship. Stepping closer, the brothers catch the scent of decomposition. The hold is packed with the corpses of soldiers who died of plague. The Rattlings back away, salute the mad sergeant, who promises them medals and imminent reinforcements, and hurry to leave. Ensuring the pursuit has fallen behind, they enter the helmsman. Inside, a grim atmosphere prevails. Smoke, dim light, and a crowd of desperate people too afraid to descend into the fortress. The Rattlings make their way to a table, stealing food and drink along the way. They discuss their past mission. They guided the priest Thaddeus to the crucible, but lost the bone machine their employer had given them. The fortress began to shift and melt, turning into a surreal nightmare. So they abandoned the device at the entrance. Rouse hopes this is enough to get paid. He reaches for his glass, but suddenly blacks out, his face hitting the table. Rouse wakes up, strapped to a chair. A bright light blinds him. Nearby is Rain, whose vision is swimming. Looming over them is a hooded figure, smelling of oil and hydraulics. Bestial snarls resonate inside Rouse's head, merging into a single telepathic voice. It is their employer. He is displeased. Rouse's wrist explodes in agony. An implant has been triggered. The voice in his head informs him that he has no interest in Thaddeus, the true one who is destined to possess the fortress is the employer himself. The Rattlings have failed their mission. They were supposed to place the teleporter inside the crucible, not abandon it at the entrance. The employer inflicts unbearable pain on Rouse again. When the screams subside, the voice states that the teleporter is still active and emitting a weak signal. Since the map of the route remains in the Rattlings' memory, they must return and finish the job. Rouse demands payment. The employer promises to pay them with their lives and activates the torture mechanism once more, forcing Rouse to agree to any terms just to stop the pain. With a heavy, wet crunch, the boarding ramp of the Vanguard descends directly onto a corpse lying on the docking boom. Janus Drake steps out into the acrid smoke of Precipice, completely ignoring the bodies scattered around him. He calmly lights a low stick, casting an indifferent gaze over the scene of the massacre. Behind him, Isola, Odus, the Crute Greg, and the servant Quintus gather on the ramp, peering into the crimson gloom. Isola notes the sound of auto gunfire. Drake listens through the eternal hum of the station's grav engines and distinguishes the brittle crackle of gunshots echoing off battered hulls. This troubles him. Open combat is rarely tolerated on the station. A group of crew members runs past in scorched and torn jumpsuits. Bloody and limping, they ignore Drake's call, vanishing into a walkway between shuttles. Through the flickering void shield, chunks of Precipice can be seen tearing away and drifting into the cloud of debris, while electrical storms rage below. Greg scuttles down the ramp and crouches beside the crushed corpse, but Drake sharply orders him to stand and leads the group toward the helmsman bar. They navigate through the jumbled piles of space debris and abandoned scrap that make up the station. The gunfire dies down as they approach the Dromplatz, a trade dome in the center of Precipice, cobbled together from rocket boosters and cargo bays. The walkways are suspiciously empty, though a loud roar emanates from the auditorium itself. Drake checks the Xenos pistol at his belt. As they near the doors, staggering figures emerge from within, wreathed in thick clouds of smoke. Drake extinguishes his low stick and enters. Inside the trade hall, the heat is unbearable. Fire burns everywhere. Crates are overturned. Drake sees that this is no ordinary battle. People are shooting into the air and screaming. Through the smoke, a squad of heavily armored Ogryns, Bullgryns, charges forward, wielding slab shields and grenade launchers. They are met by powerful jets of flame. The giants, engulfed in fire, stagger as their tracked armor melts, then fall, turning into charred husks. Odus suggests leaving immediately, but Drake decides to investigate the cause of the chaos. He draws his splinter pistol and moves deeper into the smoke. A plume of burning promethium flies toward Drake. He ducks and rolls across the floor to escape the heat. Grek and Odus catch up, weapons at the ready. The hall's entire metal structure groans and warps from the temperature. When the smoke clears slightly, Drake sees a massive structure in the center of the hall, welded scrap shaped into a crude imperial aquila. Standing on the back of the metal eagle is the priest Thaddeus the Purifier, holding a ceremonial mace, and beside him stands Vaughn with a raised flamer. Gathered around them is a mob of shaved-headed fanatics bearing ecclesiarchy symbols, armed with flamers and chainswords. Thaddeus preaches through vox amplifiers, calling for Precipice to be burned, the ships destroyed, and all hope placed solely in the Emperor. Using his augmetic eye, Drake scans the saved files from Thaddeus's book, the Liber Eudox, and finds a reference to the Crucible. He realizes the priest is attempting to fulfill a prophecy to seize this place as a weapon. At that moment, another group of Bullgryns attempts to charge the fanatics, but the priests respond with a wall of fire, obliterating the attackers. Drake and his companions retreat further to avoid the blast. Isola suggests intervening to stop the madness, but Drake refuses, deeming it suicide. He intends to stick to the plan, find the ratlings, obtain the root, and collect the treasure. Isola proposes simply flying away and warning the Imperium from the nearest outpost, but Drake furiously rejects the idea. He has no desire to return to the Imperium a beggar and become a laborer in a manufactorum. He declares that he will either restore his fortune or die. The group leaves the burning Dromplatz, leaving Thaddeus and his growing army of fanatics behind, and heads toward the Helmsman in search of Rain and Rouse.